Hello, fourth graders. It was nice to see some of you in Google Chat today. Make sure that you are checking Google Classroom to see what your assignments are for the week. We're starting to push those out now, so there will be daily stuff for you guys to do on that slideshow. So make sure you're checking that. And I am back with some more of our Bookwanderers book. So we are on chapter 16. Welcome to the Underlibrary. Archie and Tilly, Mary said, delighted to see them when they pushed through the cafe door a few hours later. Oscar was buzzing excitedly by her side. How lovely to have a visit. Sit down, and let me get you a pot of tea. Oscar says you've offered to take him into town with Tilly. Are you sure it's not an imposition? No time for tea, thanks, Mary, Granddad said, and yes, of course, happy to have him along. Give them both a change of scenery, you know. Oh yes, Mary said, looking pleased. It would be good for Oscar to get out for a bit and experience some culture at the same time. Is there an exhibition on at the moment that you fancied? Granddad faltered and Oscar jumped in. It was something to do with Alice in Wonderland that you were keen on, wasn't it? Yes, I believe you can see some of Lewis Carroll's manuscripts in the Treasures Gallery, Granddad bluffed. Tilly and Oscar nodded along. Lovely, Mary said. Thanks so much, Archie. Oscar, do you have your Oyster card? Oscar patted his jeans pocket in response. Perfect, Mary said. Can't wait to hear all about it. The trio set off for the station, which was only a 5-minute walk down the high street. They scanned their cards on the machines and bundled onto a train headed into central London. Tilly spotted one person with a Harry Potter book, but people were mainly reading the free newspapers. The British Library was a couple of minutes down the road from King's Cross Station, but Oscar and Tilly still had to break into an awkward half-jog to keep up with Granddad, who was striding ahead, weaving speedily in and out of people wearing suits and tourists wielding tube maps and cameras. They nearly crashed into the back of him as he suddenly stopped outside a huge red brick arch that marked the entrance. The British Library was carved into the stone above their heads, and a black iron grid of letters spelled out the same words underneath it. They stepped through into a large courtyard full of every kind of person you could imagine. Students with unwashed hair, weighed down by threadbare tote bags full of books, slick-looking business people shaking hands, and hipsters with slim laptop cases and reusable coffee mugs all mingled around them. The floor of the courtyard was a grid of red and white bricks, and the coppery buildings that surrounded them were lined with red accents. The spires and clock tower of King's Cross Station peeped out from behind the library walls, and a huge statue of a man holding some kind of mathematical equipment dominated the view. Who's that supposed to be? Oscar asked, pointing at the vast sculpture. That's Sir Isaac Newton, Granddad said. The statue was made by a sculptor called Edoardo Pilozzi. It's inspired by a drawing of Newton by William Blake, the writer. Awesome, Oscar breathed. Granddad shepherded them toward the steps up to the main entrance. They passed the line of people having their bags checked by security guards and walked into a huge, airy entrance hall. There was a gift shop to their left and a low white desk immediately in front of them where people were being given directions and information. Stairs and escalators led off in several directions, and the air was filled with a gentle musical hum of noise and typing. It smelled like coffee and paper. Behind the reception desk was a huge tower made of glass and black metal that stretched up toward the ceiling, and which was lined with thousands upon thousands of ancient-looking books. Granddad headed straight toward it. On the first floor there was a set of padded black doors with a gilt sign overhead saying, "The King's Library." A narrow walkway led to a door behind a gate that said very clearly in large letters, "Staff Only." Granddad pushed it open without hesitation. Granddad, it says staff only in here. I don't think we're allowed, Tilly said nervously. Don't worry, Tilly, it's okay. You'll see, Granddad said, not seeming to notice the curious glances from the people working at the nearby desks. There was a black keypad by the door that Granddad punched 4 numbers into before pushing one of the heavy doors open with a satisfying click. Tilly and Oscar slipped through after Granddad into a cool, dark space lined with countless books. When she wasn't looking directly at them, Tilly could have sworn the page edges were rustling and whispering to one another. Granddad led them down a twisting metal staircase to what looked like a lift door tucked away in a corner. There was an out of order sign pinned up, but Granddad pressed the button anyway and the doors slid open. Tilly and Oscar looked at Granddad in confusion, but he pushed them gently aside. Most of the British Library is 4 levels under your feet, Granddad said, but, we sort of borrow some of the space from them. Who's we? Tilly said, looking at him quizzically. You're about to find out, he said as he wiped some sort of card down a slot and pressed one of the buttons. The lift juddered and started to move, but instead of going up or down, The now familiar toasty marshmallowy smell filled the air, and the sides of the lift cascaded down like wallpaper strips peeling away. Lift is another word for elevator. In place of the beige walls, there was an ornate interior made of dark, shiny wood and gilt decorations. Lines of gold buttons stretched from the floor to the very top of the lift, too high for Tilly to have pushed if she wanted to. The doors pinged open. "Welcome to the British Underlibrary," Granddad said. "After you." Chapter 17. Legare e Peregrinari. Tilly and Oscar looked at each other in confusion. Granddad's tone had implied something huge and grand, but they were standing in a narrow corridor with wooden floorboards and nondescript doors lining the walls that curled round into darkness. It was far from unpleasant, but the majestic towers of books that they'd come from were much more impressive, and Tilly had grown used to book magic transporting her somewhere wild and wonderful. "Where did you say we were exactly?" she asked, looking up at Granddad. "The Underlibrary," Granddad repeated, gesturing. "Do you know something I don't?" Oscar said to Tilly under his breath. Tilly shook her head in response, and he elbowed her into another question. "What exactly is the Underlibrary?" Tilly asked. "We did the whole flippy magic thing in the lift, but we're just in a normal corridor." "Oh, are we in a normal corridor that is actually in a book?" "What book is there an Underlibrary in?" Oscar whispered to Tilly. No, Granddad was flustered and frustrated. "The Underlibrary is not from a book. This normal corridor is where all the flippy magic, as you so casually put it, Matilda, comes from. Perhaps you'd better follow me." Granddad set off down the corridor, and Tilly and Oscar followed. Tilly was so focused on keeping up with Granddad that it wasn't until Oscar nudged her and pointed to one of the doors they were passing that she realized some of the signs were a little out of the ordinary. In between accounts and HR, they passed the map room, classifications, and character registry. And all the signs were prefaced by a string of numbers and dots. It didn't look much like either the calm, modern British library upstairs or the cozy, friendly public library down the road from Pages and Company. Eventually, the corridor ended in a set of wooden double doors with twisty, curved handles. "Let's try this again," Granddad said, and pushed them open. "That's more like it," Oscar said as he stepped into a room that was exactly what you might hope a secret magical library would look like. The ceiling was painted deep turquoise and billowed high above them, cradled by ornate wooden arches. There's a picture here. The floor was also wooden, and the sound of their tapping heels echoed around them, mixed in with hushed conversations and the whispering of pages being turned. They had entered through a door that was set into one of the narrow ends of the rectangular hall. The wall that faced them was painted cream and hung with wooden panels covered in gold writing above double doors that mirrored the ones they had just come through. Between the two sets of doors, 5 floors of long aisles lined with shelves and shelves of books opened out into the main atrium. Each aisle ended with an ornate metal grille. The central atrium was empty of furniture apart from a large circular desk in the very middle, which was looped round a huge wooden box made up of hundreds of tiny drawers with gold handles. Carved into the front of the desk were the words, "Legare e Peregrinari." "What does that mean?" Tilly said, pointing. "It's Latin," Granddad explained. "It doesn't have an easy English translation, but the verb peregrinar means to travel about, to roam or to wander. So it essentially means to read is to wander. It's the motto of the Underlibrary." The hall was full of people wearing navy blue cardigans with a gold trim. There were people carrying books and files, groups of them talking in small huddles, and Tilly glimpsed even more on the floors that stretched away from the hall, writing at long wooden desks. There was a cluster of librarians nearby, sorting and loading piles of books into an elaborate paternoster, like a giant dumbwaiter system. But instead of the plain metal boxes Tilly had seen being used to deliver food in restaurants, this was a large, intricate selection of wooden caskets, hung together on coppery chains, being hauled up and down and sideways, and being sent off to different floors of the library as they watched. Every few seconds, the sound of peaceful chatter was interrupted by a thump, as a man at the main desk stamped a book and threw it into a chute behind him. "Okay, enough gawping for now. You'll have a chance to see more of it at some point, I promise. Let's go and find the librarian," Granddad said, gently poking Tilly in the back to get her moving. Oscar followed, his mouth still open in wonder. They walked over to the desk in the middle, and the young man who looked up as they approached wore an easy smile on his face until he saw Granddad. Oh, Mr. Pages, he stuttered. I don't think we were expecting you. No, I doubt you were, Granddad said, studiously avoiding Tilly's gaze. Is Amelia around? I don't know, sir. She'll probably be in her office. Shall I get someone to take you up? I know the way, Granddad said, smiling gently at the man who was now nervously straightening his glasses. Oh, yes, of course you do, he said sheepishly. Can I let anyone else know that you're here, sir? That won't be necessary, thank you, Granddad said quickly. Let's go, kids. He ushered them past the desk, where several of the people were now openly staring at them, and toward the doors at the opposite end of the hall. As they left the main atrium, Tilly looked back over her shoulder to see that every single cardiganed person in the room had stopped in their tracks and was watching them leave. Granddad, why is everyone staring? Tilly asked tentatively. Don't be silly, darling. They're just excited by visitors. This way, come on. The trio were in another long corridor lined with wooden doors, although this time they were not named but numbered. Granddad counted under his breath until he reached number 42, then stopped abruptly. This time Tilly and Oscar did plow into the back of him. Here we are, he said, and knocked sharply on the door. It opened to reveal a woman with very straight, long black hair and brown skin whose eyes widened at the sight of Granddad before her face broke into a broad and sincere smile. Archie Pages. It's been a while. Come in, she said, standing back to let them enter. They walked into a large, cozy, but decidedly normal office, not that dissimilar to the head teacher's office at school. A crumpled cardigan was hanging off the back of a chair behind a desk piled high with books and papers, and a very new-looking computer. Amelia, this is Oscar Rowe, a friend, and Matilda Pages, my granddaughter. An expression that Tilly couldn't quite read swept across Amelia's face before she smiled and held out her hand to them. A large gold key on a chain round her neck swung as she leaned toward them. Welcome to the British Underlibrary. I'm Amelia Whisper, librarian. Pleased to meet you. Amelia gestured toward a collection of worn but comfortable-looking armchairs clustered in the corner of the office. She shrugged her cardigan on as they sat down, and Tilly noticed that there was an ornate key embroidered in gold thread on the breast of the cardigan, alongside the same Latin words they'd seen in the main hall. You'll see that not much has changed, Archie, she said. Cup of tea, anyone? Tilly nodded a yes, please. You've been here before, Granddad? She asked. Amelia laughed. Well, of course he's been here before. The librarian can hardly work from home. But you're the librarian, Oscar said, confused. Right, I'm the librarian now, but it used to be Tilly's granddad. She faltered. You didn't know? No, Amelia, they didn't know. After everything that happened, Elsie and I decided it was for the best to start afresh. For Tilly's benefit, Granddad said. Several emotions flickered across Amelia's face. Well, I suppose that's your decision, Archie, she said in the end. Oscar and Tilly exchanged a confused look. Can I just ask, Tilly started, but Granddad and Amelia kept talking. I need to sit down with you at some point and talk about Enoch, too, Granddad was saying. Who's Enoch? Oscar whispered to Tilly. I think he's Mr. Chalk, Tilly said. Would you mind not whispering while we're talking? Granddad said, much more sharply than usual. But we don't know anything, Tilly said, stung by Granddad's tone. You keep mentioning all these secrets and things and people, and I have no idea what is going on, and you just suddenly bring us to this hidden magical underground library and expect us to be quiet and nod along and drink tea, and you haven't explained anything! Oscar scuffed his heels together awkwardly, and Amelia became very focused on her cup of tea. Granddad looked at Tilly as though his heart had just cracked open. I'm sorry, he said. This can wait, Amelia. Matilda, Oscar, I suppose we should start at the beginning. Leaving you on a cliffhanger again. So it sounds like in our next chapters we're going to find out about all that mysterious book traveling. So I will be back tomorrow with some more of our book. See you then.